Proportion. What are we talking about when we mean that? Well, direct and indirect, sometimes known as the inverse, because when you do other courses, they will sometimes refer to this as the inverse proportion. Well, let's deal with direct first. Direct proportion. What does it mean? Well, that means, well, if we have two separate quantities, quantity 1 and quantity 2. If quantity 1 goes up, then quantity 2 will also go up. And on the other hand, vice versa. If quantity 1 goes down, quantity 2 will also go down. If this phenomenon happens, this means that these two quantities are in direct proportion to one another. Let's jump into an example. That's how we learn. We learn by doing, not by learning. Yeah. If we buy packets of chips, okay, so if we buy 13 packets of chips and it costs 150 Rand, these are the good stuff. This is the good chips. Very, very good stuff. How much will it cost if we buy 8 packets of chips? Well, let's put it into a table. So we have chips to the price, okay? 13 packets of chips cost us 150 Rand, as stated in the question. That's all well and good. If we buy 8 packets of chips, what would be the price of 8 packets of chips? I've used a variable to basically symbolize this new price. So this is a solving for x type of problem. So just remember, with direct proportion, and if you remember this, you'll never ever go wrong. Direct proportion means that there is a constant quotient. Remember, quotient in mathematics is a division symbol. In other words, there are fractions that are going to equal one another. Now, excuse me, I like to always put my variable on the top of the equation to avoid that whole cross multiply story. I'm not a fan of it. If there's no cross multiply, there's just less room for error. So I'm going to say that 150 over 13, there's my ratio. Okay, is equal to x over 8. As long as you keep the sides corresponding to one another, you can flip this equation any way that you want. I flipped it so that the variable is on the top. That's just the way that I like to do things, because I can just take this over and say that x is equal to 8 multiplied by that fraction. 8 multiplied by that fraction. And that will give me 92,31. Use your machine friend. That's why he's there. Okay, so in other words, if we wanted to buy 8 packets of chips, it would cost us 92,31 Rand. Alright, well, on the other question, let's look at another question. This one. Say we only had 200 Rand. Okay? How many packets of chips could this buy for us? Well, it's the same thing. Constant ratio. Direct proportion, constant ratio. Remember, I want the variable on top. Avoid using information that I calculated. I'm going to avoid this altogether. I'm still going to use this one. The 13 and the 150. So I'm going to say that 13 over 150 is equal to y divided by 200. Can you see that? See how I manipulated the formula. I turned it on its head. I'm allowed to do that. It's an equation. Just what you're not allowed to do is turn one side without turning the other. And it's exactly like how I just solved for x. I'll say that y is equal to 200 multiplied by 13 over 150, which is going to give me, remember, just machine friend, which is going to give me a grand total of 17,33 packets of chips. Now, if you were somewhat reasonable, this would only get you 17 packets of chips. Even if this was 17,99, you would be lying if you said that you could buy 18 packets with that. That can only get you 17 packets of chips. But that's not the important part. The important part is the number crunching. If you understood the number crunching behind it, then I would be happy. So all that you have to remember, direct proportion, constant ratio. That's it. That is it. Constant quotient, constant ratio. All right. Inverse, indirect, the complete opposite. If we have quantity 1, all right, and quantity 2, all right, if quantity 1 goes up, quantity 2 goes down, and vice versa. If quantity 1 goes down, quantity 2 goes up. You got that complete opposite. Remember, direct proportion, it was up, up, down, down. Indirect, it was down, up, down. I think I nailed that. Okay, so in other words, and you got to think about it logically. If we buy chips, okay, the more chips you buy, the more it'll cost. Unless you are doing some shady stuff. But the less chips you buy, the less it'll cost. So obviously that's a direct proportion question. But on the other hand, if we have 18 laborers, in other words, 18 workers to complete, if we take 18 laborers and they take 39 hours to complete a job, okay, so it's laborers to a job. How long will it take if we hire 5 more laborers? Now logic dictates that the more workers we have, the less time it'll take to complete a job. Okay, if you hire more workers and it takes more time to complete a job, what are you doing? You need to go and look at your workers and shout at them, because geez, like, that is just craziness. Okay, more workers, less time. Okay, and then obviously less workers, more time. Can you see that? Can you see that? Up, down, down, up. Okay, indirect, inverse. And the thing that you need to remember about inverse, remember, direct was constant quotient. This one is going to be constant product. Remember, product in maths is a multiply symbol. So we have 18 laborers, will take 39 hours. Okay, how many, if we hire 5 more laborers, in other words, if we have 23 laborers, how long will the job take? Well, it's simple. 18 times 39 is going to equal 23 times x. This times that will equal this times that. We don't have to play around with any fractions in this case. It's so much easier. It's so much easier. Okay? In other words, x will simply be equal to 18 times 39 divided by 23. Calculator friend, calculator friend. 30,52 hours. Okay? Look, the moment you get this, you've done the hard parts. You've done the hard parts. Then it's just solving for x. Solving for x is easy. Okay? On the other question, follow-up question. What if we needed the job to be completed in 20 hours? Okay? How many laborers would we need to complete the job in 20 hours? Again, I'm going to avoid using information that I calculated. Why? Because there's a chance that if I made a mistake in that question, then I would screw myself in the next question to come. Use the information that the examiner gives to you. Sometimes you can't, I know. But wherever possible, avoid using information that you have calculated. It's shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, so I'm going to say the same thing as before. 18 times 39 is going to equal 20 multiplied by y. This multiplied by this. Easy stuff. And then simply, it's solving for x all over again. Y is equal to 18 times 39 all over 20. And my calculator friend, one last time, will give me 35,1 workers, which means that I actually need 36 workers. If I get 35 workers or laborers, it'll actually be more than 20 hours. Look, if you don't understand this part, that's okay, as long as you understand the actual number crunching behind this whole story. All that you have to remember, direct proportion, constant quotient. In other words, just equate a fraction to one another. Keep the sides the same. Keep these the same. If this is rands or money, keep it to money. If this is your object that you're buying, you have to compare them to one another. Don't just flip one side without flipping the other. On the other hand, inverse proportion, constant product. In other words, you just multiply those bad boys by one another and you just do your solving for x from there. You guys know how to do it. You're clever. I trust that you are clever, okay? That's all you have to remember about proportionality.